Salve Episcopali Insignes. All of you are noteworthy. I want to apologize again for the difficulty in my lesson using the technology. I acquired a new mouse to try to speed my work along, and the settings weren't picking up my double clicks, which is what made it difficult for me. I know that a number of you were able to very successfully use the cut and paste feature to reorder things. And I thank you for your persistence in that. I wanted to come back to the opening of the Metamorphoses and try to, in essence, wrap it up with you. Some of the reordering work pushed you guys, inspired you, maybe is the right word, to give translations. That is actually today's homework, but I hope that the further instruction in this video will allow you to translate more consistently with Ovid's intentions and his meaning. At any point that you wish to, pause the video and make notations in your own documents or in your own thought process. And we're going to go ahead and push on. The first clause of the sentence, I've gone ahead and done a little bit of overkill using coloring for all of the words and then putting them into the the text boxes in a manner that reorders, not only making the subject animus come first and the verb fert, the first verb fert come second, but also within the chunks, I've reordered the nouns and the adjectives so that they more formally represent the flow of Ovid's thought. And I do admit that it is a challenge to move from the word order of the Latin and to comprehend it. I am consistently amazed by the genius of the Romans in coping with a language that would present the prepositional phrase in Noah, begin it, but not finish it until the beginning of the next line with the word corpora, using enjambment. And a Roman reader, a Roman poet and a Roman reader or audience would pick up on these germs of ideas, and I mean germs in the best sense, like seeds germinate, the germs of ideas, and hold them as possibilities in their heads until the full sprouting, if you will, of the prepositional phrase. At the same time, they were holding in Noah in suspension and not matching it up with corpora just yet. The Romans were able to have the impression that we got coming up to the caesura at Animus that, oops, those are the wrong keys, that Ovid was saying, my mind is carrying me into new things. And indeed, Ovid's mind was. Now, I'm starting to repeat myself from yesterday. We're going to carry through the reordering work in the video. I'm going to do all the heavy lifting, but I want you guys to think and process along the way. And one of the first things you're going to notice as you look further down into the passage is that I have highlighted the conjunctions. We always want to look for head words. Conjunctions are the head of subordinate clauses sometimes, or of coordinate clauses. Sometimes, as with et, they're joining together two words, vos, you won't like that it's in front of mutastis, but it is, and illos, as we're going to see. Nam as a conjunction introduces this whole parenthetical clause, almost a subordinate clause, but more of a sort of, a parenthesis, a side thought that Ovid has chosen to put in. The que, I'd like you guys to think about what the que joins together. There were very, very few of you who wanted to do what que does, which is it takes its place attached to the first word of its unit. So que is attached to the tail end of prima, but the force of que is felt in front of prima. I'm going to ruin things in terms of Ovid's writing by putting a little ampersand, an and sign here. I'd like you guys on a very, very high level to think about what's on the left-hand side of the ampersand and what's on the right-hand side. What are the two common elements that join, that and serves to join together? Have you thought of it yet? Well, the short answer is it's the two main verbs. Dedukate. I'm not going to highlight whole words because that's annoying. And adspirate. Folks, what are the forms of these words? Yeah, they're imperatives. They're plural imperatives. To whom are these imperatives addressed? Ovid's getting bossy. Well, he's using imperatives. We don't want to judge his tone. But whom is he addressing? If you figured it out yet, it's D, the gods. In a replacement of epic's traditional invocation of the muses, Ovid is addressing the gods as a group, all of them. And I'd like you to consider why he is doing so. Now, I have selected the text on D. I'm going to highlight it. I'm going to leave it in black though. It's not the subject. D is in the vocative case. You fine folks know that direct address requires the use of the vocative case. D, contracted form of dei, which we, by the way, saw in Catullus' poem 13, the dinner party invitation, is being used as Ovid calls upon the gods at the beginning of his poem. In Homer's epic, Homer called upon an anonymous muse to help him remember where the epic began, where his epic began with the quarrel between Achilles and Agamemnon. Ovid is not invoking a muse, he's calling on the gods. And I'd like you to ponder and consider why he is doing so. Well, his explanation is in the parenthesis, nam vos mutastis et illas. Nam, you guys know, has an explanatory force, meaning for or cause, or almost along the lines of indeed. And embedded in this parenthesis is another verb form, mutastis. Mutastis is a syncopated verb form. You don't want me to bore you with the terminology, but it's a compressed way of saying mutavistis, mutavistis, except a syllable is contracted out of the middle. You know Shakespeare does that with words, his verbs especially. He'll contract a syllable out of the middle of a word, and we do that in ordinary speech as well. All right, so this explanatory clause introduces the idea of why Ovid is addressing the gods directly. Nam, go ahead and translate it in your head, for or cause. Mutastis, you have changed. So we have mutastis catching the idea of mutatas. The mutatas formas in line 1 are the forms of Daphne, Arachne, Baucis and Philemon, others who have been changed. Who are the agents of change? Who are responsible for the change? That's right, it's the gods. And as the eyewitnesses, indeed not just the eyewitnesses, the responsible parties, I don't want to say culprits because that's a negative word, as the responsible parties for the transformations, the gods are the best source of information on how all that happened. And that is why Ovid is invoking them directly at the beginning of the Metamorphoses. It's a bold move. Um, Acting like Homer did and counting on the muses to be an intermediary is standard in epic. But Ovid is being very bold. I don't want to say bossy, but bold in saying, hey, gods, you transformed all these people. Help me. Help me remember how it went. Help me tell how it went. All right. Getting long winded here. I am, by the way, setting you guys up to translate this. I hope you are listening very, 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 very well. And I want to point out something that we have two direct objects for mutastis. We've got vos, it's you, but you as a direct object. And then, wait a second, as the direct object of a verb where you plural is the subject. And that's the point at which we would use a reflexive translation of vos. You have changed yourselves. Because the gods changed their appearance. Athena turned into a mortal when she came down to dare Arachne to do her actions. Jupiter changed into a bull to abduct Europa. Uh, Jupiter and Mercury changed themselves into poor, humble travelers when they visited Baucis and Philemon. So, vos is the first direct object of mutastis. Illos is the second one, joined together by this lovely et. It's not where you want it to be, but it's there. Illos is the second direct object, and you're going to notice that its ending is feminine, accusative, and plural. Why is that? Well, it's picking up the idea of formos in the first clause of the sentence. The gods have changed themselves, and the gods have changed the forms of Arachne, the forms of Baucis and Philemon. Okay? And Illos is standing in for the longer noun adjective phrase, illos formos. All right, well, we've mangled the parenthesis, or I have. You guys, please pardon my awkward handling of that. What I'd like to do now is pull out to the main ideas in the remaining pieces of line 2, line 3, and line 4. I've already singled out D as vocative. I've already also singled out the verbs ad spirata and deducita, plural imperatives, as Ovid asks or requests or orders the gods to do certain things. When you did the vocab work on ad spirata, a lot of you picked up on the notation that ad spirata takes the dative case for its object. It's not technically a direct object. You don't want me to get lost in the grammar, but many of you had the notation that ad spirata takes the dative case. For the moment, let's go ahead and stick with the idea that the dative case is used for an indirect object. Where do we find those indirect objects? Or the indirect object, excuse me. Where do we find words in the dative case? Well, you're correct. Coiptes. This is a substantive use of the participle. It's from koipi, the verb meaning to undertake or begin. As a substantive perfect participle, it means things undertaken, things begun. Conventionally, we can use substantives in English, such as beginnings or undertakings. Some of you who have brilliant memories might remember the motto above the floating eye on the great seal of the United States of America with the phrase annuit coiptes. He has agreed to our undertakings. The word our is not present. The unidentified he is God, providence in that national motto. But there was, oddly enough, a use of coiptes in the dative case as the object, call it indirect if you want to, of the verb annuit. He has said yes to our undertakings. Similarly, we have in Latin, and I'm not going to color ad sperate, we have a compound verb. Spiro, sperare, all by itself, means breathe. Ad means toward or at, can also mean near. But this compound verb is an elaboration upon the idea of breathing. I want you to think about a situation where you are trying to strike a flame, strike a fire. You don't have a match. You don't have the wonderful technology of a match to do it. You have to use a technology such as, a magnifying glass, a piece of steel and flint, one of the wooden, quickly rotating wooden staffs that you put into a hole and you rotate it and it makes friction. You're going to put small pieces of fuel for the fire on the ground or near whatever you're trying to alight. And you're going to create the heat, whether using light or a spark or friction. And if you're lucky, that tinder is going to catch fire. How are you going to encourage the fire? How are you going to make it catch? You're going to put oxygen on the fire. You're going to breathe upon the fire. You're going to, sorry, I know that sounds weird coming through the microphone, but you're going to breathe upon the fire. You're going to add oxygen so that combustion can take place, the fire can grow, and you can stay warm on a cold night. I'd like you to think about spiro spirare with a different prefix on it. Got it? It's a word that we use to mean to breathe ideas into somebody, to breathe creative spirit, to breathe a notion into somebody so that their brain catches fire with the opportunity to create a new scientific process or work of art. Yep, you're thinking about inspiration, okay, about how a great book can inspire you to look at the world in a new way, or a musical composition can inspire you, can breathe into you a joy or a terror or an emotion that you've never felt before. So, Ovid is saying, ad spirata meis coiptis. Oops, I'm reordering that. That's not supposed to happen. All right, this is starting to get long. I'm going to notice my wonderful ampersand. I'm also going to notice that we've dealt with everything in front of the ampersand. Not going to repeat myself on how we've done that, but it's been glorious. Now, I'm going to get rid of the ampersand. It bugs me, messes up the rhythm. And I'm going to repeat my idea that qua joins together two clauses, each of which are headed by imperatives. Ad sperata, meis coiptis. And then we have qua, and then way down here, embedded in the middle of this highly interlocking word order synkesist line, we have deducita. How should we group the rest of the words together? Well, crazy Latin teacher is going to use noun adjective agreement. It's going to notice that prima, with that lovely ablative ending, is feminine and singular, just like the noun origo, origenes is feminine and singular in the ablative origine. And yes, they're ablative because they depend upon the preposition ob. So if I were reordering this, and I don't want to do your work for you, I would notice that there's noun adjective agreement operating with prima and origine. Now I've dealt with a prepositional phrase, but there is this lovely little genitive phrase, mundi, which is hanging from the idea of origine. Mundus mundi, a noun some of you struggled with when you're doing your vocab work. Mundus mundi means the world. But the world in an ordered fashion, the universe, the idea that we live in an ordered universe is, well, it's hard to accept during the coronavirus, but we do live in a very ordered universe, maybe just not the order we'd like it to be. But this idea of the world, it, shall we say, in the genitive case, depends upon origine. Now, I want to harken back to the opening of the Iliad. The opening of the Iliad established a starting point, the moment when Achilles and Agamemnon quarreled. That was going to be the beginning of Homer's story. What is Ovid setting as the beginning of his story? Yeah, the prima origo mundi, the creation of the world, the very beginning. You might harken back to our reading about the 4 ages of humankind in lesson 61. It was very abbreviated, but it was there. All right, I'm going to speed things along. Noun adjective agreement, it's a wonderful thing. It makes the world go round in a nice ordered way, at least the Latin world. Prima and origine. I'd like you to, as we skip into the next line, tell me, what does mea modify? It's not perpetuum, it's not deducite, it's not carmen, it's tempora. Ovid's doing a bit of synchesis here. I'm letting that cat out of the bag from early on. Now, we've noticed after the que, if we pull it out in front as an English and, we may want to move to the imperative verb deducite. We don't have to, but we can. Deducite is modified by 2 prepositional phrases, ab prima origine mundi. There's another prepositional phrase, ad mea tempora. What's left? Okay. It's perpetuum carmen. Noun adjective agreement. It'll save your bacon or it will burn your bacon. You choose. And if you like tofu bacon, tofaken, that's okay. But you don't want to burn it. You want to save your tofaken. Perpetuum modifies carmen. They are together the direct object of deducite. And I'd like you to notice what Ovid has done along the way. In this second imperative clause, and I know this is running long, but the goal is to do some of the teaching that will allow you to produce a great translation of this and better understanding of it, is that he has created, dependent upon deducite, 2 prepositional phrases. One is beginning with ob in English, in our English-speaking brain, that sets the beginning of his poem. A prima origine mundi. What are the ending points of the poem? Or what is the ending point of the poem? Well, it's expressed by the second prepositional phrase, ad mea tempora. I'd like you to hearken back to the reading that you did about Ovid's life and his works and see if you can recall, what did Ovid choose as the ending point of the Metamorphoses? If you pause the video to look it up, that's great. If not, do so now because I'm going to reveal it. He chose as the ending point of his poem the deification of Julius Caesar. It's a point that 9th graders you probably have talked about in Brit Lit. 10th graders have heard this before. Sorry, not Brit Lit, Classical Lit. I did not get to emphasize this enough previously, but Ovid chose the ending point as the ending point of the Metamorphoses, the final transformation, if you will, of Julius Caesar, not from citizen into consul, not from consul into proconsular governor of Gaul, not from proconsular governor of Gaul to instigator of civil war, not from instigator of civil war to dictator, not from dictator to dictator for life, not from dictator for life to death, but from death to immortality, from being a dead human to being a god. That event happened in 42 BC. The deification of Julius Caesar was celebrated, recognized in 42 BC. It's exactly 1 year after Ovid was born. Ovid was born in 43 BC. Do you see how Ovid is personalizing for himself and for his Roman audience that linkage of a final transformation with the current state of affairs? Ad mea tempora. Now, I'm being really long-winded, hopefully for a good purpose. I'd like you guys to consider the final word of the poem, Carmen. It's modified by the adjective perpetuum. Ovid is playing on the idea of perpetuum. Perpetuus aurum, we learned way back in the day, means constant. Perpetual is a great derivative. Everlasting, like a gobstopper. Continuous is another translation of it. Ovid starts his poem with the first beginning of the world. He ends it with an event that his contemporary Romans, most of them, had lived through, the deification of Julius Caesar. We're talking about eons of time, mythologically or geologically. Let's not import geology into this. We're talking about eons of time. And what is Ovid claiming to produce? A continuous poem, one that starts at the beginning and ends at the end. But Ovid is playing with that idea. As we talked about in the video and in the reading about Ovid's life and biography, he did not present these the way that a historical chronicle would, from event A to event B, all the way down to event triple Z. Ovid interweaves these events, jumping from time frame to time frame, from narrator to narrator. It's almost as if Ovid is asking us to see that in this last line of the poem, with the interlocking word order, mea perpetuum tempora carmen. Ovid is going to interweave these events into a unified poem. He's going to transform epic. And trust me, it is going to be epic. Now, we can't read all approximately 12,000 lines of the Metamorphoses. That would not be something that would be a student-friendly way to end the semester. That would be a teacher-friendly way to end the semester. We'll be moving on very soon into a, how do I want to say this? The story of Daedalus and Icarus, that's what I want to say. One more episode from the Metamorphoses before we leave it behind and wrap up the semester. But that's way far ahead of us. Immediately in your future is the task of translating this. If you've listened patiently through this video, you've heard a lot that can help you. Your task is going to present this information in its current form, the blocks of text. Down here below, you'll translate all 4 lines. So, the mind brings me